If y'all would please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Ms. Maxwell will lead us in invocation.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and the ability for all of us to meet together to try to work through this building project with what's best for our students in our community. Guide and direct us as we go today and throughout the week, and bring us back on Monday safely. Be with everyone as they drive home tonight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to give a kind of a brief overview and then turn it over to Masonic Construction. We're glad they're here tonight, and tonight's workshop is an opportunity to give the board a chance to really look at the numbers for the construction costs and have an opportunity to feel comfortable with them before Monday night's board meeting is where we'd actually vote to whether you would approve it or not. And so to kind of give you a little bit of a synopsis of what has happened since the bond election and it passed, we had a pre-bid meeting at the high school library where lots of subcontractors came and got an overview of what the project was going to look like, and they got to tour the high school and see for themselves what was going to happen. The week of Thanksgiving, that Tuesday, Toby and Scott and I went to Masonic's office in Waco, and they had a stack about this tall of bids. And we watched them. They're very transparent. They date stamp it, and they put up the name of the company and what they bid. And they go to the next page. And we did that for probably 2 or 3 hours. And so then those guys went through and really looked at, what were the bids? Did they know the vendor? Did they have a good work history? So not only was it, the lowest bid, but also we're not just looking at the cost, but can these folks handle it? Another thing they looked at is local. Were there Gatesville folks that were applying for these jobs and that sort of thing. So we tried to, they tried to pick folks that maybe are here local. That's important. I think you guys have expressed that pretty frequently. And so basically there's 3 things in this little packet. There is a summary page that has the base bid on it, and then it's got a list of 9 alternates. And just very quickly, the ones in yellow are the ones we're thinking that we better go ahead and budget for. Now 5 and 6 are CTE related. Those are ones that we think that CTE funds can take care of them. It's a welding exhaust and that big canopy over the CTE courtyard. 7, 8, and 9 has to do with the water predicament here in the city. And so can we get enough water pressure to help the fire suppression? That's a fancy word to say the sprinklers, to make sure they can sprinkle and we can put a fire out if we had one. And so we've been talking a lot with the city on that. And so we're trying to come up with a solution where maybe these won't be needed. Now, from a risk standpoint, at this point early in the game, I think we have to go ahead and say we want to go ahead and go for it to have these just in case. Because if everything fell with the city and we didn't have a fire pump, then you're up the creek because you can't put out the fire. And so, but we're hoping that we're going to get something resolved where 7, 8, and 9 go away at some point. So that's the big page there within the proposed GMP with all the alternates that we're wanting. The next page then goes line by line. All the different things that were bid, the different they're categorized by different parts of the building process. And Ed and Eddie can speak to that if they like. And then the third, you can actually see the vendors who bid and what did they bid. And who all went out for these different types of jobs. And so this is a pretty long list here, but there were even more that I think were considered that had an opportunity, but maybe they just decided not to bid on it. There's a pretty tight time frame that these guys have to go in at one point, do some work, and they got to leave. Then they got to come back and do some more work, and so that makes it a little bit trickier for some of these subcontractors. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And so, Ed, Eddie, do you guys want to
Yeah, I'll just kind of add to what you were saying, Barrett. You know, more couple of fun facts, I guess you could say about it. So we actually solicited this project to over 540 different subcontractors throughout the Central Texas area, probably ranging from Dallas all the way down to Austin, and then some, depending on some specialty contractors. Out of the over 500 contractors we solicited to, we did receive about half that, about 250 bids. Which is honestly, it sounds like you only get 50% return, but that's actually pretty solid, especially when you're dealing with a project of this magnitude. Because as Barrett mentioned, there's not every contractor that may be interested in a project can handle one of this magnitude. So it's important that we got 250 bids, but they're good from good qualified contractors by and large. Within those 250 bids, of those that we had selected or that we're recommending to be part of the project, 82% of the whole entire project cost were from subcontractors or suppliers that operate within a 40-mile radius of Gatesville, Texas. So that's that's a pretty high percentage. We try to push for that, especially on every project. But I was really happy to see that we were able to get such good. I consider within 40 miles being a local participation of this area, and that 82% equates to over $13 million worth of this project cost. So I mean that's a hefty number. That's going to be more or less from companies that are based in this Central Texas area or within 40 miles of Gatesville. We had and that I guess that dollar, and then contractor-wise that equates to about 32 different companies. And then even just within Coryell County, there's about 2.4 million of the whole overall project cost is just allocated for companies within Coryell County. So, albeit there weren't a number of contractors within Coryell County that we're recommending for the project or that pursued the project, but of those, they were some larger or potentially some larger scale contracts. So we're happy to get that level of involvement within Coryell County, and hope that those that the board agrees with those recommendations. So yeah, I mean the alternates that Barrett kind of had mentioned, the 7, 8, and 9 having to do with the fire pump. We actually had our recommended fire sprinkler contractor also come out, that he was willing to came at no cost to do a flow test on the city's water pressure, just to better determine or define whether or not this was going to be a necessity. And as in their opinion, it probably will be. So I mean, I can't agree with Barrett anymore that we need to allocate those funds as part of the GMP, given the likelihood that we're going to need it due to the city's water pressure. But outside of that, I think 5 and 6 are obviously very, very beneficial. Number 6 especially. I mean, that's going to be a really cool finish for that area outside of the shop welding class. So within that, I guess I'm really just kind of field any questions that everybody may have.
I have a question. It may be for both of y'all. Would we be far ahead to invest this fire pump, all of this money with the city and getting this water main down through here, because
Yes.
we'd be able to add a plug to cover primary and intermediate?
Yeah.
We'd be able to add a plug to cover junior, because if you fix the high school, you still got a problem at all these other buildings.
So here's the conundrum. My thinking is, what the district would like to do is, the fire pump to me is a very Band-Aid type of solution. That's short-term, nearsighted. We'll do it if we absolutely have to. The better alternative in my mind is there's a great big water pipe off of 36 that's 12 inches, Toby? 12 inches. It's got 80 PSI. That's more pressure than you'd ever need. And our land adjoins right to it. So it'd be basically, if we can connect to it, it's all underneath our land, get it right to the high school. The problem or concern from the city's standpoint that they're still working through is, if we did that, as simple as that seems, would that create some sort of pressure problem where we're rushing water towards the other water tower next to McDonald's, creating a potential overflow, is what they're thinking, that we could flood that water tower. Now, there's a question about that, or whether or not would that happen. And so they're trying to work through that to see, would that be a potential problem, or is that faulty science, that would not happen? Or could they have some sort of valve that would stop that from happening? But to me, if we ever add on or fix something at the junior high, or we want to do something to another campus in this general vicinity, we don't want to have to keep getting a water pump and a fire riser room and potentially a 5,000 gallon tank of water just in case. I mean, to me, that's that's not a very good solution. And so we've even gotten TTG to quote us, like, how much would it be to run a pipe underneath the ground, hook it up there, run it over here to the high school, loop it to where it doesn't stagnate, and it's about this amount of money. To me, that's money a lot better spent if you do a more long-term solution as opposed to the fire pump.
Plus your other benefits.
Yes.
You pick up a lot more fire coverage, if nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah, it helps the whole area. So we're waiting. We're waiting to see if we can get a solution. Of course, we don't want to be responsible for overflowing something. At the same time, if we can make that a solution, we'll sure pursue it.
One other thing I'll mention too, that Barrett I think touched on too, with regards to the subcontractors that we're recommending for the project, that, you know, all of the major trades and pretty much anybody that was potentially being considered for this project, at the very minimum, they were verbally grilled on a phone call. You know, questions that were asked were, you know, what's your current workload like? What's your past work history like? Especially for those that maybe we don't have as lengthy of a working relationship with. What are your upcoming projects like? You know, what is your workforce like? You know, how many guys do you have on staff? I mean, this is the entirety of this project is critical to you guys as a school district, especially at the front end of the project too. There's a whole lot of things that have to happen, and so it wasn't just, you know, we had to make sure that people fully understood the construction schedule as well, because it's not a very typical project. It's not like you're just going to go out and start pushing dirt, and the next day then you're going to have a concrete guy, and then you're going to start erecting steel. There's a lot of things that have to happen on the front end of this project that kind of get things out of sequence, and there are a lot of subcontractors that may have not been aware of the construction schedule. So part of our vetting process for everybody was making sure that they understood the sequence of construction for this project in particular, in addition to their capabilities, their work history, and, you know, upcoming, you know, workload as well. So a lot of effort went into vetting these guys, because the last thing we want to do is recommend somebody that may be capable of performing on the project, but they just have too much work going on. And, you know, you guys deserve to be the most important project for everybody, not just us, but also the people downstream that are working underneath us.
So have you worked with most of these contractors before?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know that there's one on here that we absolutely haven't worked for at all, that we're recommending to use. Some we've worked with more frequently than others, just due to geographic location. So
I'd like to add that there was a very extensive construction bar chart schedule that was very detailed about what happened on the front end when the demolition starts, when the building demolition steps in place. And I can't tell you how important that is to have in the hands of each and every subcontractor they're bidding. They have to understand the schedule, how you're here for a short period of time, you may have to leave and then come back. So y'all don't have a copy of it here, and it is real complicated. I'm sure you could understand it, but if you need a schedule, we'll get you a copy. But that was a
yeah, because there were some subcontractors that were interested in bidding the project, but then once they, you know, digested the construction schedule, they're like, oh my goodness, well, you know, I'm quote booked up until, you know, the middle of 2020. Well, that doesn't really do us any good. You know, if we need an electrician day one, which we do, you know, that doesn't do you any good if somebody's going to be available in June. So, you know, we did run into that a little bit just on the front end process. I think everybody that we received bids from, we made a point that they had reviewed the construction schedule. So I don't feel like the numbers are misrepresented in what the bids that we received, but it definitely hamstrung some folks that we would have liked to pursue the project. I mean, there's an electrical contractor that couldn't bid the job that, you know, that does, gosh, you know, $40 million worth of work of school work across the state, but you know, they were the first ones. It's like, look, if you need an electrician before June of 2020, I can't help you. And we needed that honesty, though. I mean, the last thing we want is somebody that signed up that didn't understand the schedule or, you know, is overextended.
And at the pre-bid walkthrough, they also asked for our testing calendar, so they're very cognizant of what we do as a school, and so they were looking at how that's going to fit into the work schedule as well.
Now, there's one very important thing to understand here. this 17.7 something million is for the construction costs only. Now, there's that other category called soft costs that's got all those other things like abatement and the portables and all the furniture and fixtures that you put in the building and all those sorts of things. So it's not, don't walk away saying, well, we got a good deal. It's not gonna be 20 million after all, it's gonna be 17. That's not right. This is now the vast majority of it, but there's still gonna be a lot of stuff we've gotta buy that's gonna push it up to the 20 million mark. Now, we're hoping that things will come in cheaper and lower and different things, and we might be able to get it below that, but I wanted y'all to be aware that that's what this means here. What Eddie's saying is, what we'll vote on Monday night then is the guaranteed maximum price, the most we would pay for the construction that's listed in all the
That's correct.
segment,
Yes.
Which is this.
which is that, yes.
So how did those figures come in? High, low, compared to what you were thinking?
Actually, I mean, the last budget that I did, that I believe I shared with Barrett and Daryl, I mean, oddly, it's within like $20,000. I mean, within the individual line items, money was not necessarily apples to apples, but at the bottom line, I mean, the last budget I put together was like 17.34 million. And, you know, obviously we weren't accounting, wasn't fully aware of all the alternates at the time that we were putting together budgets because WRA's team was still evaluating what needed to be bid out as an alternate. But as far as the base bid amount goes, I mean, yeah, I was extremely happy to see that our overall number was that close to what we had been budgeting. Because with the construction market like it is right now, it could have very easily gone the other direction.
So cost did not go up like you thought they could have.
Not like they could have. Not like we have been seeing or hearing on some other projects. So again, you know, we were kind of pushing with, or not pushing, but also working with Barrett's group and WRA to make sure that we were able to bid this project before the end of the year, and most importantly, bid it before we got into the holiday season, because there's just a whole lot of other moving parts that people can't control. Everybody's got families and other things to do during the holidays, and sometimes bidding projects just goes to the wayside when this time of year, and you really don't want that outside factor to weigh into somebody's decision whether or not they're going to be able to bid your work. So I think this, we really hit a good sweet spot of bidding a project in the fourth quarter. A lot of subcontractors are looking for work. They want to go into 2020 knowing they've got more work on coming up, and it's just it's a much better position to be in for everybody, rather than wondering where you're going to put your workforce come January 1. So, you know, I think that kind of hungry mentality that a lot of subcontractors have, especially the ones that we're recommending for this project, definitely played into the pricing that we were able to receive.
Did y'all have a question? Rob,
Looking here.
Did y'all have a question? Did y'all have a question?
Pole vault surface, or are we having to move the pole vault pit or something? What is that?
The way that wraps around the back of the tech building, you know, that concrete emergency lane, it goes over half of the pole vault pit. And so, yeah, we looked at that one specifically, that 17,000. We hesitate not to redo it because I guess from a pole vaulting, I don't know if there's a pole vault expert here, but if the wind's blowing a certain way, you want to be able to run that way, and if it's blowing the other way, you want to be able to run at it this way. And so we hated to hamstring them by just saying, well, you're out of luck. We paved over half of it, and so we had to we're going to redo the other half.
Okay.
On the electrical, do we have the bids on electrical?
Mm-hmm.
All right, my question is, I know there is a lot of difference in cost between using copper and using aluminum. So what are we using?
Right now, everything, the way the project was laid out, the plans and specifications from WRA, it's copper, and we'll have to talk to the electrical contractor that we're proposing to use for that, as far as being a what we call a value engineering option to change to aluminum. And yes, that could be a cost savings measure, but it would have to be approved by WRA's electrical engineer, which I would like to think it would be. It's something that we've done very commonly in the past as well. But yeah, I mean, that could save, I don't have hard numbers from the electrical contractor, but I did ask him, it's like, you know, just what are we looking at here? I mean, it could be upwards of you know, $80,000 or $90,000.
Mary talked to me specifically about that. She said there's two things that she said I'm going to save you money on. but she said, I don't want to reduce this number because I would rather have it like in a contingency, just in case something else went haywire. But she said, one, we'll switch from copper to aluminum to save a lot of money. And she said, two, there is a specialty table in the kitchen that's made out of stainless steel. She said, I found a vendor that makes the table for $130,000 less than what they had originally thought. She said, but I don't want to reduce this down by those two things because she said, I just want to have that in there in case something else goes haywire.
And that's a very true statement. I would absolutely agree with it from our standpoint. I mean, the contingency money is your money, and it's not our money to spend. But there are unforeseen conditions, especially when you're dealing with renovations, especially when you're dealing with additions, and this is just about everything under that umbrella. And the last thing we want is to be dipping into the contingency money and to the point where we're struggling to have enough there if we unearth something that is completely unforeseen that nobody even knew existed between the two buildings. Part of the demolition process, something is not put together the way that it was assumed or investigated by the WRA's team. You know, that there's some of the contingency money is going to need to be spent, and you're much better suited having a bigger pot of it at the front end, and then you just end up returning all of it back to the school district at the end. And but it's kind of a call it a cushion. Everybody sleeps a little bit better at night knowing that that money is available and there to cover these things. Nobody has to come back to the school board and ask for additional money, because that's never a fun conversation to have either. So.
One other good bit of news is the city was gracious and said, we'll give you the building permit for free. So they're working on reviewing it this week, and we should get it pretty soon. So that was another cost savers.
Did we ever find the results on the core drilling of the
Geotech.
Yes, the Geotech Results, yeah. That company actually is gonna probably be outsourced to do the materials testing. That's the Langerman Foster group I believe they're out of Waco.
Yeah.
And the owner has been here, but those results, from your standpoint, the soil is good, hard enough to take on the foundation?
Well, the foundation design is pretty typical. I mean, it's not, you know, the most expensive type of foundation would be a fully suspended slab, because you have to have the carton forms underneath everything. It's just basically introducing a completely different product that it obviously adds cost to your foundation, you know, into the cost. So we didn't have to do that. So the soil is not that bad. It's a typical, I guess you'd call it like a cut fill project, where you're having to excavate out approximately 4 feet of bad soil, and then you come back in with select fill material, and then we're drilling piers and grade beams, and it's I guess you could call it closer to a conventional commercial slab or foundation design, which, you know, from our perspective, it's about the most cost effective it gets. So that was relatively good news, yes, because originally I was budgeting a much higher number for the foundation work, because we didn't have that information about the geotech from the geotechnical engineer.
Do y'all have any other questions in preparation for Monday night?
Man, that's it? Really?
No, just give us a minute. Just give us a minute.
This question doesn't really mean anything, I'm just curious about the spray foam. Quite a bit of difference in the bid, 6,000, I think that's a 6, and the highest bid being 20,000. Is that correct?
26,000.
That is correct. Now, and I'm going to attribute a lot of the delta in between those two companies is logistics. This LCR Contractors, they're based out of Dallas or Austin. I think they have multiple offices. And one, their cost of doing business, doing work in the metropolitan area is going to be more than Waco, Texas, where Thermodynamics is located. And, you know, 35 miles versus, you know, 90 to 100, depending on what part of the Metroplex they're located in. But that's where a lot, I think, you've seen the cost difference there.
Where will you use spray foam at?
It's It's a detail that we don't see very often, but it's for better insulating the building envelope. So the most prevalent locations you see it, you'll have your walls are going all the way up to the structure, and we have insulation within the exterior walls, and then at the top where the structural steel kind of meets your light gauge metal framing, there usually ends up being some sort of void space that's almost impossible to try to get bad insulation into that area. And so WRA has shown this spray foam to basically seal that area off and just kind of give you just a little bit tighter, building envelope.
I mean, I've had some buildings spray foamed, and $6,000 is not
They're not gonna-
buying you much
No, it's
spray
not.
They're
foam.
not
No,
gonna do much spray foam
yeah, we're
with
talking
6,000.
about basically somebody going with a wand and going right just along the top. This isn't like the whole building exterior, like.
Yeah, but that's
yeah.
very few square footage.
Yes.
Spray foam's expensive.
It'll pay for itself, but.
I love it. So like on that line, I noticed it says, applied fireproofing. So the company that got it's not gonna put fireproofing on it? Is that what I'm
I'm not
getting?
sure if it's a liability thing, an insurance thing, but it would behoove Thermodynamics to get into that business, but they do not currently do that, the applied fireproofing or with sprayed on fireproofing, and LCR does.
Don't feel like it's necessary, or
It's just not a product
For
that
y'all.
they carry. Oh,
for y'all, for our building?
well, the fireproofing is only necessary at one area, and I'm sure Mary will probably speak to more of the technical aspect of it, but the general location where it occurs is only at where the new classroom wing connects to the existing technology building. There's one area there that I think just, for some reason, to meet certain fire codes, we have to fireproof the structure at the point that it's connecting to the technology building.
So it's gonna be fireproofed in another manner?
Well, that area is gonna get fireproofed.
So
We basically
is-
are using both companies.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry,
That's
it's,
incorrect.
yeah, I misunderstood your
Okay.
question, but yes.
Yeah.
So Thermodynamics is doing the spray foam along the perimeter up where the light gauge framing would meet the steel, and then LCR would get a contract for $3,700 to do the applied fireproofing at this one little area where the classroom wing meets.
I see the gray now.
He gets to be-
Sometimes it's a blur with my glasses.
What's the worst thing that could happen?
What, in general, boy, that's an open-ended question. I'd be here all night answering that one. And life and construction of this project?
In your experience, what's been a pretty rough thing that happened that surprised you?
Just in the course of construction,
Yeah,
or?
just in a renovation.
Okay, well, I can think of one.
So we won't want that to happen, or?
Well, I can give you an example that can't possibly happen here just because we're not putting in an elevator, but we recently completed a project at Baylor at Waco Hall. I don't know if anybody's been there. It's really not, historic performance hall there. And it was a complicated project enough because we had to go in and tear out an old elevator, put a bigger elevator in, which required modifying the elevator shaft. Well, nobody knew that apparently we were going to be working beneath the water table. So during the demolition, we tore out the old elevator pit foundation, and immediately it started filling up with water. It's as if the concrete was holding the water down. And it was upwards of 6 to 8 weeks working through with the architect and engineer and Baylor trying to come up with a solution to that problem to channel the water. I mean, it was bizarre. I mean, it was like an underground river just of water that just never stopped. I mean, this was in the middle of the summer, a time of year where you should not have.
But the whole area is a seep over there.
You're right. I mean, we're not very far
Close
away
to
from
the-
Waco
right
Creek
to the
and all
river.
that, but that was a very unpleasant surprise on that project. But it took a lot of time, effort, and a little bit of extra money, and with the right team of people at the helm, you come up with a solution, implement it, and got a new elevator put in, and there's still water flowing underneath that building, but it's not getting in the elevator pit. So, but I don't see that being a problem here.
We can't even get a good rain. We tell y'all.
No, and I was gonna say,
construction.
just wait. It's gonna happen at the most inopportune time.
Ready.
Scott, you have any questions or anything, or Toby, or? Y'all been through all this before with a fine tooth comb, haven't
Yeah,
you?
we've been working with Masonic and it's it's a laborious process, and they've been upfront, they've been available for us for our questions, we give them a call at any time, and so they've been good partners.
Feel very confident working with them. I
Yeah.
don't foresee any, I mean, there'll be some issues come up, but that's just the nature of the beast, but I don't think there's anything that they're not gonna be able to handle. And
It's a huge ordeal for us, and y'all do this every day. That's,
We were extremely pleased that Tuesday before Thanksgiving because that number coming in almost right at the 17.3 was, you know, a miracle. It could have been 19.3. I mean, and that would have been terrible. And so you had to do a lot of work to get it down. So having that, we were excited that it was on point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because leading up to us taking bids, you know, I mean, I get hundreds of phone calls from different vendors asking questions, and I'd forward a bunch of them on to Mary for the most part, and then a lot of them would chime in and say, "My goodness, man, why? Well, this is some high dollar stuff. This is some high dollar stuff." I mean, just generically speaking, but I'm like, you're scaring the crap out of me. It's like this project is like, we've got a really finite budget here, and we were kind of towing the line during the budgeting process here, and so I was very pleasant that you know, you guys are going to get an amazing building, and it's going to shine. We don't get to work on school projects that are going to look as nice as this is going to look, and I don't feel like you guys are paying a premium to get that. I think you're getting a great team of subcontractors, and it's going to produce a great project that is really going to stand out from most other area school districts.
I want to add something that our staff at the office has commented about working with WRA and their plans. So much of the projects that we see are cut and paste with a lot of details from one area, and then they paste it on the plan that says similar. And I'm with my superintendent to feel one that's supposed to be similar to what? And it's quite obvious that we run into this with different architectural firms, and WRA has put out probably as good a set of plans for this type of work. And we work with a lot of different architectural teams. It's the first time with WRA though.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of confidence in them. They've been very amicable. They respond well to phone calls, and I think y'all hired a good architect.
They were there with us that Tuesday, looking at all the bids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Charles, you asked a question about the aluminum wire. I think that you and WRA, this group, your board, will be able to help make that decision. There's a couple of other things that we're going to run that up the flagpole, but we normally do the aluminum wire, and also looking at different light manufacturers. And not that WRA has done anything wrong, but architects, it's not uncommon that they'll specify a certain brand, Metalux or one, stainless steel top. And you got somebody else that can build it cheaper, and but there's going to be some substitutions that we're going to say are or equal, that you as a board should have the right to say, we'd like to save the money and use a different product. But in all fairness to WRA and their engineers, is it Estes McClure?
Mm-hmm.
EMA? You know, they have it's their seal. They want to make everything safe for the school and give you a good project. So the system is that we ask the questions, would you be interested in that? Goes to WRA, Estes McClure. Then we come back, and this is the savings that some potential savings. And we do a lot of school projects. I'm going to be surprised if you're not presented with at least $100,000 worth of savings.
I had one deal that caught my attention. It was a preformed stainless steel dome to cover the CTE
The canopy?
canopy.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that was a big dollar.
Are you talking about this?
alternate number 6.
Alternate, yeah.
Yeah, the canopy portion
Is
of that alternate
something
number
that you
6
have
is
an
about
option on that would still be functional and as good, rather than a stainless steel dome,
Prefab?
prefab?
Yeah, well, so the product that is, that WRA specified, it's very common, and we see it on just about any school project. It's a pre-engineered they call them walkway covers, but I mean, this one is basically just a big giant canopy, more or less. So, you know, you're paying for, you know, pre-finished aluminum metal that's coated to colored whatever WRA or Gatesville selects. They're engineering it. So they're providing all the design work for that product, and then as well as the labor to install it. So I mean, the material itself is not, you know, is relatively expensive. I mean, it being aluminum, and you're not just paying for anodized aluminum. You're paying for a finish baked onto it as well. Then you got the installation labor associated with that. This canopy in particular, as part of that altar number 6, also included 3 or 4 fans, large fans that are going to spin underneath there to help, you know, kind of keep air, I guess, flowing during the summer, hotter months. And then, you know, lights underneath the canopy as well. So, I mean, it all kind of adds up. But yes, I mean,
how many square feet? Do you remember?
gosh, I don't off the top of my head. I mean, I bet it's at least 2,000 square feet that you're covering, though. I mean, you're covering a very large area. I mean, it's basically the area between what's going to be the new classroom wing and your existing CTE building almost become that entire area between the 2 buildings. It gets covered with this canopy.
It's going from the building trade shop all the way to wherever the fire lane is. I can't remember how many feet that is. It's pretty long.
Yes.
Probably going to cover all of building trades. I think it'll probably go halfway down, maybe at least halfway down the welding shop, if not more.
I think it covers just about all of those doors that are open that way.
Will that be connected to the building and all, being like waterproof from rain blowing in, or is it just a shade? What are we talking about?
It'll be attached or flashed into the existing the CTE building, so that you'd be walking out. It's not like you're going to have water that's going to hit you between the CTE building and the canopy. So that portion will be covered.
Will it
Or
put
keep
more,
you from getting.
Will it put more water over on our old automotive welding and vocational area? Will it put more water?
Well, they have integral. The gutters are integral, and then they actually use the columns are used like downspouts, and so they channel all the water in and directly down, and then it'll you know, daylight down at the bottom at the sidewalk level.
But it doesn't rain too much. But it has.
It can.
It can.
And that area has always been a water trap.
Yes.
Well, and we're addressing a lot of that too. I mean, there's a lot of subsoil drainage, the storm water or storm pipe that we're putting in that's going to channel all that water in there. So if I'm right about this canopy going to be you know, daylight draining out on the pavement, it will quickly find its way to an area drain and then, you know, down to the retention pond.
So in the cost of the dirt work, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember if it's retention or detention, the
I know, I
pond.
get them wrong too.
Is the pond we're gonna build, is that included in the dirt work?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Is it gonna have to be pumped out of there? How's it getting out?
There is a pump, yes. So it'll be in there and then it'll get pumped up out of the pond, and then there's enough positive flow to get it out towards the street, past the field house buildings, athletic buildings.
Guys, do you feel pretty good before Monday night?
I feel better than I did today when I opened this.
That's good. Going the right direction.
There's a lot of numbers here to look at.
I guess realistically, you know, when you're looking at the CTE number 5 and 6, that will come out of CTE funds, so that number will actually be less than what that is there.
Yeah, that's good. That's a bunch.
So right now, we don't have any exhaust fans in the welding shop?
Toby, we have,
We've got some built into the wall, you know, some of those 36 by 36 fans that pretty well take care of anything that they generate, but it's just, you really need to tie the actual welding hoods into a system that'll pull it down through the roof, and that's what that'll.
and especially if we're gonna have, the canopy, you know, there's not gonna be a lot of room for the exhaust to escape. And we really need something
a lot of that canopy is the shop real estate is, the equipment that you got in there takes up a lot of your footprint of your shop. So with that canopy, you can actually do a lot of your stuff outside. And it's gonna be, it's gonna have a fence at the end of it, so it'll be secure, but they'll have a way to, move projects outside and not be so confined in the shop area. So that's a lot of what that canopy is gonna be good for.
It'll allow us, at the building trades, to start building a tiny home. Right now, we can't really do that because there's not enough room in the shop, and to expose it out to the elements right now, it just wouldn't be good, so.
All of the contractors are individually bonded that you're going to use, are they not?
We will be bonded, and then they'll subcontract underneath us. So as a contractor, we're responsible for the subcontractors, but we are not recommending to bond individual subcontractors. Just us as a general will be bonded.
So if somebody is not able to complete their portion of this for what they bid on it,
That's on us.
who eats it?
That's on us. That's why our vetting process is so important, as well as our work history with subcontractors.
How does a warranty work on something like this?
Certain products may have more than a 1-year warranty. I mean, you basically have what do you call it, bumper to bumper 1-year warranty from us and for anything within the building. And then beyond that, obviously the roofing work, you'll have a 15 or 20 year. I'm not sure, recall what exactly was in the specifications for that. There could be some other specialty products in here that may have longer manufacturer warranties, especially with door hardware and things of that nature. Usually carry like a 5 or 10 year warranty. So there's everything, and that's all going to be part of our closeout process. So when we turn the project over, there'll be electronically a bunch of files that will have all the warranty letters broken out by product, essentially, so that everybody is fully aware that if there is an issue that happens in year 4, that you guys know where to go find that warranty information, and if it's a manufacturer issue, then they will come out and take care of it. More times than not, you guys just call us and we'll come fix it though.
Let's talk about the worst thing that could happen. 5 years later, the slab just doesn't hold up.
That won't happen.
Don't say it won't, because,
We sure hope
the
that
worst
doesn't
thing. We hope it don't, but how would that be handled?
That would be likely an insurance claim at that point.
Yeah, so there's a liability policy, and part of that is what we call completed operations insurance. And as a prime contractor, our insurance company charges us on a rate on the volume of subcontracted work. But our contract also requires each one of the subs, they have to be indemnified to us. They in turn have their own liability insurance. And this is why when there is a liability claim, the foundation is, like you said, that's the worst thing that could happen, because then you're affecting multiple trades. I mean, the foundation, oftentimes then you've got wall or masonry work or interior finishes that have to be corrected, and those bills be quite costly. And of course, everybody, the insurance companies, they're going to bring their team of attorneys in, but this is one reason that foundations are belt and suspenders, and there's a lot of this stuff is over designed. If you were going to have an issue on a school project, it would be a thin piece of copper, and you got a water leak in a wall, and depending upon the severity of that, or if there was a roof leak someplace that wasn't related to a storm, then the roofer's got to do warranty work, then his insurance company has to pay for the painting or replacing the carpet. Believe me, we've been there. We have to deal with that.
Not with
foundation
failures.
failed.
No, not that one.
I mean, it's just something that we hope it doesn't happen for sure, but I'm just curious as to the process, if it did. How are we covered? What's, our protection in something this big?
This is why the state of Texas mandates workers' compensation insurance for all workers at a school. And of course, Texas is a little bit unique in the fact that if you're covered by workers' comp, it makes it very difficult to come back and sue a contractor or a school district, because there's insurance, you've got liability insurance, but the state of Texas requires all of these tiers of insurance. And then on top of that, there's a performance and payment bond. This performance and payment bond guarantees that all work is going to be in accordance with the contract documents. And I mean, it could be a year or 2 years later, even if the contractor is gone, I mean, that bond is still in effect. So some of these questions that you're asking, David, I don't know who the school district's attorney is, and they're gonna tell you there's layers and layers of insurance to protect the district.
Anybody else? Mr. Frazier? You have any comment?
Proud of WRA for getting the numbers pretty much right in line with projections. We gotta make sure that the rest of the costs are also in reasonable bounds as well, the extra. But they've done a great job, and we appreciate them. I will have an insurance question for you before we leave.
Okay.
Well, there's no action tonight. This was just for questions and to make sure we were ready for Monday night, just in case y'all had a whole lot of questions. We didn't want y'all to feel rushed before having to take the vote. I would ask, we might, for future business, we have another important item, and that is the financing options. And so Brian Grubbs, our financial manager that we outsource with, he wants to come and talk to you guys about, do you do it on a 15-year note? Do you do it on a 20-year note? How much do we save on interest by paying it off early? All those types of things. And so it's not necessarily an action item, but it would be something where he wants you guys to hear all those different things. Because that's almost as equally as important as what we're doing right here, as far as the paying it off and saving interest. And so I guess my question for you guys, as far as having him come out, what is best for your schedule? Next week, would a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday at noon be okay? Or would you rather do a more traditional one, like a Tuesday night at 6:30 or a Thursday night at 6:30? What fits within your schedule? I don't think it will be real lengthy. It would probably be maybe even less time than this one.
Who can come through the day? Everybody?
That's a hard one for,
Yeah.
well, Cheyenne, Brenda, and you, that'd be hard for you more. So Thursday night's best for me.
And we don't have to do it at 6:30. We could do it earlier in the evening too, if that works for you. It's just up to you guys. 4 o'clock?
I don't think that'd be hard for me.
Thursday.
And things are so busy right now, I don't expect we'll get everybody, just like tonight, we couldn't get everybody, but just where we could get a quorum is the most important thing. And again, I think it will be a brief meeting, but it's an important one.
Would 5 work?
That'll work better for me, but don't do it around my.
That would work, or later.
But you can't do Thursday? So Brenda probably, I don't know what Brenda.
Ooh, I got an obligation Thursday night.
How about Tuesday?
Tuesday night?
Not for me. About Monday?
We've got a meeting.
We already.
Well, do it then.
It's too late.
I've been here before till 2:30 in the morning. Are we pretty lengthy Monday night? I haven't looked at the.
It could be. And I can ask Brian too if we have to do it before the break or if we could do it after. I guess we could ask him that too. So,
Do you know when the bonds are actually gonna be issued?
Probably the latter part of January. January 21, somewhere in that range.
I'll revisit with him and see if it's just absolutely necessary. He's got 9 different districts that he's going to give this exact same presentation to. So 9 different districts that are doing a bond like we are and trying to get options. And so he's as busy as you guys are, and it's hard for us to book him. So I'll ask him.
Ask him if he could come at at 5
Okay,
some afternoon,
okay,
but not Thursday
okay.
or Monday.
Friday, I can do Friday,
And,
that works
I
better
could
for
do
y'all.
Friday.
Friday.
and,
I could do early
Could you do
afternoon
4
even.
Friday?
Hmm?
Could you do 4? Or would it have to
Yeah,
be
we
5?
we got a half day scheduled next Friday.
You gonna be around on Friday? No, okay.
okay.
We just may not need you then.
And I'll, like I said, if it's not pressing, maybe we can wait till after Christmas. So we'll see. But at least I've got that. I needed to know that. That's all I needed.
Okay. Any questions? Anything else? Okay. Meeting's adjourned.
Ed, Eddie, thank you
Thank y'all for
guys.
coming.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.